Thank you, Gandhinaya. Vallal Perumanar's teaching are unique, and it provides a universal path to realize and achieve the soul's ultimate gain before our lifetime. The soul's ultimate gain, as said by Vallalar, is to attain God's natural ecstasy without being bounded by any objects, space, and live an incomparable extended life. And God's grace is the only path to attain it. To obtain His grace, the means is through compassionate discipline and firmly believe that there is no other path, as said by Vallalar in Jivagarunya Olukam. And there are multiple events which has exposed the divinity of Vallal Perumanar, who is our guru, who is guiding everyone now. So Vallalar united himself with God in January 30th, 1874. The place what we are seeing now in the snapshot is what's called a Siddhivaragam. He asked his disciples to lock the room and not to open it. Further, he added, if it was forced open, God is not going to reveal him, and he will be united with the true nature. This news eventually did spread across. It sparked concerns, some questions, and the government was finally forced to open the doors, and the room was empty. This is a day of celebration. Every year, on the month of Thaipusam, which is Tamil month, which typically falls on January or February, devotees will get a chance to glimpse at the room. And this marks the unification of Swami Ramalingam with God and proved to mankind on deathlessness and paved a path to attain it. On October 5th, 1823, in Marudur, Chidambaram district, Ramalingam Pillai, Ramaya Pillai, and Chinnamal gave birth to Ramalingam, who is the fifth kid. He had two brothers and two sisters. When looking into his childhood, in the early ages, he lost his dad, and his mother moved to Chennai with the kids. Ramalingam spent all his young age living in this home in Chennai. His eldest brother's name is Sababadi Pillai. Sababadi Pillai was a teacher and also a preacher. Those days, the entertainments were different. They were doing dramas, preaching in community halls, performing speeches in temples and home. So his elder brother's job was doing all the preaching and does also teaching as well. He married Parvati Ammal. Ramalingam's sisters and his brother Parashuraman, they were all settled in different places. And his mom has to go and take care of them and help them. So at this point, Ramalingam was staying with his elder brother. And He grew in his eldest brother's home. With the difference in age between the elder brother and Ramalingam, and also with the loss of his father Sababadi Pillai, his elder brother, was like a dad to him. Ramalingam's childhood was spending his time completely with his eldest brother at this home. Sababadi Pillai wants to teach Ramalingam, but Ramalingam doesn't get synchronized with his brother's teaching or interested in it. It did not captivate him. Sababadi Pillai was not able to get his attention and thought that Ramalingam is taking the liberty of him being his brother as a teacher, because Ramalingam was spending most of his time singing in temples and being out. So his brother decided that he wants his teacher, Kanjipuram Sababadi Mudaliyar, to also teach Ramalingam as well. When he decided, he had Ramalingam to join his Gurukulam with Kanjipuram Sababadi Mudaliyar. He is a well-known and a famous teacher of those times. But things weren't any different. Ramalingam was still the same. He had still spending time singing most of the time and being out and being himself. But Sababadi Mudaliyar was able to understand about Ramalingam's extraordinary talent. And he realized that he is not able to teach Ramalingam because Ramalingam is able to realize lots of things without learning and is able to express through words. So what he did was he conveys this to his elder brother, like he is not qualified to teach Ramalingam, and sends him back home. But this was not welcomed by his elder brother, and he wasn't really interested in his feedback either. So his elder brother was definitely definitely not happy about the situation and also about the feedback given, because he felt the responsibility as a father and insists his wife Parvati Ammal not to feed Ramalingam if he is not obeying and studying. So this kind of conflict of interest continued, and this continued for some time. And Ramalingam's presence at home was always when his brother was not around. Time passed by. One day, during their father's death ceremonial event, everybody was invited to have food in their home. Sabavadi Pillai, as usual, was concerned about Ramalingam's future. He wasn't able to enjoy that day, neither his wife. So they did not have food that day. And when Ramalingam came to have his food alone, when Sabavadi Pillai was not at home, Parvati Ammal wasn't able to resist crying, seeing him eating alone, concealing himself from his brother. Ramalingam cannot withstand to see his Anniyamma, who he calls, crying and he agrees. He was always full of compassion from the early childhood. So he agrees to obey and study as per his brother's instruction. But that did come with some condition. He wanted a separate room up the stairs with mirror and some worshipping things, and wanted to study by himself. But his brother and Aniyama was happy about this because they saw this was the first positive step. Because initially he never agreed to listen, and now he wanted to do himself. So they were okay, they were welcoming this situation, and they did agree to all the conditions which he put forth. And days had passed faster. One day, there was an issue with Sabhabadi Pillai's teammate. So what is called as Kayyedu Vasital is a person who basically reads poems during speech. So the poems which are put forth in the languages has to be read with proper pause and separation. Otherwise, the context of it and the meaning of it would change completely. So Sabhabadi Pillai, during his speech, has someone to assist him reading those poems while he explains what it is about. Since that person wasn't able to make that day, he was confused if he has to continue that speech or not. And Aniyama had an idea. And what she did was she outlined the situation and checks if Ramalingam can help his brother about reading the poem. But Ramalingam did agree when hearing that, and they continued the speech. So at the end of the speech, everyone was really attracted towards the way it was read. The voice was stunning. The pronunciation was pretty clear. The separation of words were perfect. Emotions in there poured out. So this was a really welcoming sign and a very good sigh of relief for his brother. So this condition continues for some time. And Sabhabadi Pillai was definitely happy that Ramalingam is turning to be the way he wanted to be. And one day, what happened was a huge event was organized for preaching. And that same day, Sabhabadi Pillai felt very sick that he will not make that event. So he was asking Ramalingam to inform Somu Chettiar, who is the organizer of that event, that he will not be able to make that speech. So Ramalingam goes to this event location to convey that his brother will not make the speech. The event was set up very grand, lights all over the place, people buzzing over the place, everybody in festive mood. There is lots of expectation around this area, and everybody was happy, and that was a prime entertainment during those times as well. So Ramalingam, with some hesitancy, conveyed the message to Somu Chettiar, and there were people around him. Hearing the message that his brother will not be able to make the speech today, the people were disappointed, and they do not want everyone else to be disappointed either. And some of them suggested that Ramalingam can read the poems, what he normally does, and can explain to the best of his knowledge. Ramalingam initially refused. He did not want to do it. But when looking at the situation, at the given scenario, with all these expectations, he later agreed because he don't want everybody to go disappointed back home. So he continues with the speech. And the speech continues. He continued the presentation beyond the scheduled time. He talked for a while. The people were really still. They were all listening. There were no confusions. There were no outside interference. Everybody was speechless and everybody was listening. And this completely changed the perception of everybody that this is not a common man's lecture. It can only be divine grace. A person with divine grace can only do it, can only do such a performance with such an elegance, with complete simplicity, and everybody was able to understand what was being conveyed at that day. So this initially was the first step of bringing Ramalingam, exposing him totally to the outside world. So the next day, his brother has to realize all these things. And what happened was Somu Chettiar, who was the organizer, came to Sabhabadi Pillai's home. Sabhabadi Pillai tells that he is getting well and he'll be able to do the next preaching without any problem. Somu Chettiar hesitated. He wasn't sure how to convey something, but Sabhavadi Pillai saw this hesitation from Somu Chettiar. He encouraged him to talk about this. He encouraged that whatever may be it to come out of it. He wants Somu Chettiar to convey what he wants to talk, what he wants to think, what he's thinking through. So Somu Chettiar conveys this message that the people are thinking that Ramalingam should continue this speech from here on because they would really love him to hear his speech. This made Sabhabadi happy and also sad at the same time. He was confused. He was confused why he wasn't invited. At the same time, why people are interested in hearing Ramalingam. But he was happy, he was glad that everybody wants to listen to Ramalingam. He agreed with pleasure. He said to Somu Chettiar that he would send Ramalingam for the next speech. The same thing happens. Ramalingam was sent back for giving his speech. And his brother was really not sure what sparked these decisions. What is the change of mind in these people? So he wanted to go and observe the situation without anyone's knowledge and see what is happening around with Ramalingam and why is his speech different than Ramalingam. So after sending Ramalingam, he follows him and he stays in a distance without anybody's knowledge. And he watches the presentation. So when Ramalingam started his speech and continues his presentation, his brother's eyes were filled with tears. The presentation continued, so does the tears in Sabhabadi's eyes. He was disappointed of himself. His disappointment is because he wasn't able to understand his brother all this time, who has been with him. He was disappointed because he thought his ideas and his methodology of how he should shape his brother's life wasn't the right one, because he was already in way advanced and he was a gifted person. So his realization came in there. It was just like a spark for him. Now he's very glad and he is happy that his brother need not need any guidance from him. He is independent. He is more than him. And he is not a normal kid. So all these realizations started coming to his brother. He cannot stop thinking through this thing. He wasn't convinced that how he wasn't able to understand this for a long time. So he leaves back home before Ramalingam comes in, conveys what he had seen and what he had realized to Aniyama with tears in his eyes, and was very glad that how things turned out for him and how, at least at this point of time, he came to realize that Ramalingam is not an ordinary kid and not a kid who has to go to school to study and learn, but a kid who is gifted, who has the grace. And he was waiting that day for Ramalingam to come back. And when he comes back, he welcomed Ramalingam home. He was gifted. He conveyed all his realization to him. But Ramalingam wasn't thrilled by that. He was still seeing him as an elder brother. He still is an elder brother to him. Says, this is nothing. And it is all through the knowledge which he has acquired from listening his brother's speech and going over the books. So he actually did maintain his low profile that day. So things continues after this. The days have gone. The days turns to weeks and weeks turn to months. So Ramalingam spirituality had gone up. So like how our school days, we go into high school, middle school, high school, bachelor's, master's, the spiritual aspect of it, the spiritual knowledge has also gone up for Ramalingam. And most of his time was spent in Chennai. And Perumanar's advancement continued, and he did even continue to a stage where he got his first student. His name is Toluvur Velayudha Mudaliyar in 1849. But there was a good incident about a poem which is worth to think about this point of time. So Toluvur Velayudha Mudaliyar actually came with a poem written in a leaf those days. He said that it was written by an ancient poet, and he needed explanation, and he wanted to understand the poem. He wasn't sure about some of the meanings and the context what it reveals. Vallal Perumanar looked at the poem, read that poem, and said, this poem was not written by any ancient person or any ancient poet. It is written by a beginner who is trying to learn with lots of mistakes. Hearing this, Toluvur Velayudha Mudaliyar apologized to Vallal Perumanar and said that it was written by him, and he fell on his feet and said he was sorry about that incident because he wasn't really confident about Perumanar. But one thing which we want to recall now is after Perumanar united with God, his first student, Toluvur Velayudha Mudaliyar, gave a testimony to Brahmanyana Sabha about Vallalar. So let us look in his own words what he is saying about Vallal Perumanar. So Vallal Perumanar is able to sing Agathiyar's song without reading. It is called Odadu Unarndavar. It's been said like that. So he realizes automatically without even reading or going through lots of books. He is praised by Arya. Arya is people who had realization of God. Kadavulai Unarnavar. Those are called Arya. No one knows how he got all the powers. Even though Perumanar kept a low profile, but his divine powers are exposed through everybody's documentation. He always kept a low profile, but everybody around him understood his powers. Everybody knew that he had the divinity and he had been blessed with him. He is a great alchemist. An alchemist is a person who is able to convert one substance to another substance. It could be either lead to a gold or to any matter to any other matter. Ayya siddhars. So this was an art at those times, and very few people were able to perfect it. And that's what an alchemist is about. And they were able to treat actually people too with their knowledge. And some of those pasmums, what even right now to these days, what we know about are being a conversion of these metals too. These metals, when treated and in certain situations, turn to medicine as well. We have witnessed his sight will destroy the desire to eat meat. So his sight on someone who consumes non-vegetarian, their desires to eat will totally be gone. What is needed is just his sight. They have to come just before him. So he had that power, and people have witnessed him. So his devotees have witnessed him. He was able to read people's mind. There have been multiple incidents where he had read people's mind. There were been incidents where he had fixed some people, and he was able to, and let's talk about this story. There was a story where one person's daughter had leprosy, and he came to Permanar because after multiple attempts by doctors and treatments that didn't go well. So Permanar said he'll take a look at it, and he was treating that person. And after his treatment, the person who had leprosy got fixed. His father was thinking that he would actually give his home to Permanar if the leprosy was fixed. But at the same time, he also wanted to give his home to the temple, which he was thinking for a very long time, because that was in his mind for a long time, and he was longing to do it. And that was next to his home, and and that's what he wanted to do. But at the same time, because of the leprosy in his daughter, he wanted to take this stance. But when the leprosy got fixed, he was kind of able to convince his mind, and he changed the will and gave it to Permanar. But Permanar said that it's better for him to follow what he had been thinking and what he had been going through all this time for giving his home to the next temple what he wanted. So there have been multiple incidents which actually reveals that. So, and also when living in Karanguli, without the knowledge of his students, he goes in disguise. He disappears for weeks and months, and nobody will be able to figure out what had happened, where he went. So this is about how he looked. So his student is saying he looks normal, fair in color, slim, bones visible, but with very good strength. He had 2 pair of white clothes. That's how much he had. And he wears an arched slipper. He is a Niradhara Tabasi, and we have never seen him taking rest. So since he does lots of fasting, it's not that he's not doing anything. He's always not seen taking rest. He's always in his works, trying to do his duty. He eats once every 1 to 2 days and gets satisfied with the food what he had. So we can see that he takes very less food, and he's also like eats only once every 1 or 2 days. Sometimes he goes into Upavasa fasting for 2 to 3 months. At that time, he does not eat anything. But what he does is he just drinks sugar water. He asks his disciples to get hot water, added sugar with it, sugar meaning not to saccharide with it. Sugar always referred to not to saccharide with it. And his disciples have to bring that water in a tongue. And he used to just drink that water with his bare hand, just like that. Yeah, and also please do not attempt that. He preaches that no one should be discriminated. Some people did not like that. Still, people from multiple castes visit him to see his siddhis. So with this, I think before starting the next topic, I think we probably want to end this, and it probably will continue a little bit more time. So we will end here, and want to thank you everybody who had come to this session. And in the next session, what we will be going over is we will be going over his lifetime of what happened about his marriage, the books he had published, and when he moved out of Chennai, the Suddha Sanmarga Sangam, how he started, and the Dharmasalai, and how from Dharmasalai he went to Jnana Sabai, and then finally, like how he united with God. So we'll see all those things in our next session. And with this, I'll end, and thank you very much, everybody, for arranging and watching it. Arutprakasa.